keep rising, and now your government is demanding answers. The assassination of Martin Luther King. Was there really a conspiracy? Tonight, what a new investigation found. And Hollywood and history. The outraged British call for a rewrite.
This is the CBS Evening News with Dan Rather reporting from CBS News headquarters in New York.
Good evening. What is going on with gasoline prices? CBS News has been told the government is about to begin a major investigation of what's driving prices up so astronomically and who is pocketing the profits. Look at this. This time last year, the nationwide average price was just $1.11 a gallon. Now it's $1.56, a 40% increase, more than 10 times the overall inflation rate. And an oil industry report today says, don't expect a turnaround anytime soon. The American Midwest is paying some of the highest gasoline prices in the country. And it's there that CBS's Cynthia Bowers has dug deeper into this story.
After gas prices jumped by 20 cents a gallon almost overnight in Columbus, Ohio, even some ministers are seeking divine intervention.
I would like it if it was back down to $1.40 a gallon, or maybe $1 a gallon.
I'm disgusted. For 3 weeks now, prices in the Midwest have gone up and up. In the Motor City, more than 40 cents a gallon since just last month.
Somebody's getting rich. I wish I had stock in Shell Oil.
With tempers flaring and fingers pointing, the federal government has summoned 9 oil companies to an unprecedented meeting Monday to explain why gas prices are so much higher in the Midwest and to determine if any price gouging is going on.
These prices that are currently out at the pumps are not acceptable, and that is why we want to meet with the oil industry to determine what are the causes of this.
Ironically, it is the EPA rather than the oil companies that is feeling the heat. That's because of new guidelines that require metropolitan areas from coast to coast to burn a cleaner, reformulated gas.
We do not see this kind of price span any other place in the country where clean burning gasoline is being used.
You got that run to marinate?
For 27 years, Steve Rabin's Medicars have been a lifesaver to Chicago's sick and elderly. Now he's laying people off and cutting back on runs and wonders how much longer he can survive spiraling costs.
I just wonder which is the price that's going to be the last one to say, you know what, it's just not worth keeping the doors open anymore.
With so much at stake, the price of gas is likely to be a volatile issue at the polls as well as the pumps, which is why there is so much pressure on the federal government to come up with an explanation, and soon. Cynthia Bowers, CBS News, Chicago.
Adjusted for inflation, gasoline prices are still below the all-time high they hit in the early 1980s, but they are catching up fast. And CBS's Jim Axelrod reports all parties involved are catching heck.
It's a high-octane game of pass the buck. Actually, make it $2. Prices are rising, patience is falling, and in the Midwest, everyone's looking for an answer.
There are about 7 or 8 factors, all of which are converging at one time.
Red Cavaney of the American Petroleum Institute blames the EPA and its new requirements for cleaner gasoline. In the Midwest, that means blending with corn-based ethanol, which is more expensive. And that's just for starters. There's supply problems, refinery problems, and OPEC's doubled the price of crude in less than a year.
You've got a situation here where you have a change, a lot of complex other factors, and people's normal patterns for driving during the summer all converging at once.
No, it's not really a complex question unless you intend for it to be a complex question.
Tim Hamilton, who represents service station owners in Washington State, doesn't buy it. He says Big Oil knew the EPA changes were coming for years and shouldn't act surprised now.
No one can seem to explain after 100 years how they price gasoline, and I believe if they ever do explain it, there's going to be some people go to jail.
Amid all the finger-pointing, a ray of hope perhaps, from some analysts who say the prices are now peaking in the Midwest.
Well, I think you can see gas come down to more like the nation average, which is around 160, not the kind of ridiculously high prices of $220 that you're seeing in the Chicago market.
When? Well, keep one eye on June 21st, OPEC's next meeting and its next chance to boost supplies. Then keep the other eye on the EPA, which could ease up on the new refining requirements. Together, These developments would make it easier and cheaper to get gas to the Midwest. Dan?
Jim Axelrod. In Congress, the House today put off a vote on closing a major loophole in campaign finance laws and the influence of special interest money, just one day after the Senate's surprise vote to approve limited control measures. The House did vote today to phase out inheritance taxes by the year 2010. President Clinton calls it an expensive tax giveaway to the rich and says he'll veto it. So the question becomes, will Congress override his veto? We asked CBS's Diana Olick to dig deeper into this story for the facts and figures on death and taxes.
We have an order where we have to cut 400 pieces.
Janine Mizell knew inheriting the family business would be hard work, but she had no idea how truly taxing it would be.
We had to liquidate all of my parents' CDs, their bank accounts, stock funds, and we sent as much cash as we could come up with off to the IRS.
With her inheritance came $250,000 tax bill.
It's very unfair.
And it's exactly the story Republicans used over and over today before they voted to kill the death tax.
It kills small businesses.
Minority and women-owned businesses.
You lose family farms in my district in droves.
So why has such a tax that punishes the little guy lasted 84 years? Because some say the Republican story is more like a fairy tale.
The argument we're hearing from Republicans over and over is that the small businesses need help.
Well, that's because they don't want to tell the truth. Imagine if they got up on the House floor and said, we want to give $100 million to Bill Gates or Warren Buffett or some other really wealthy person. They'd be laughed out, so they have to lie.
The fact is, because of large tax exemptions, the farms and businesses Republicans are talking about make up just 3% of all taxable estates. The rest are the really rich.
People with hundreds of millions of dollars, the people that give them campaign money.
And Democrats argue cutting the whole death tax will cut out $400 billion in revenue over the next decade.
It just doesn't make any economic sense at all for our great country that's just getting out of this deficit spending to get back in it.
The president promises to veto a total estate tax repeal, but says he would consider a more targeted cut to help out the small businessmen and farmers. Now it's up to the Senate to cut that deal. Dan?
Diana Olick on Capitol Hill. On the CBS Market Watch, MP3.com, the internet music provider, has settled a copyright infringement suit with two of the 5 largest record labels, Warner Music Group and BMG. MP3 will now pay the 2 labels licensing fees for using their music on the website. On Wall Street, stock prices closed mixed for the day. The Dow Blue Chips down 54, NASDAQ up 49. Still ahead on the Friday CBS Evening News. Gays are out of the TV closet and big business is more tolerant. What about mainstream America? And when Hollywood goes to war, the British don't like it. Following up now on a story CBS's David Martin first reported last week, some of America's top scientists, more of them now, are saying tests of a new missile defense system are rigged. The contractors pushing this new system, including TRW and Boeing, deny that. President Clinton is being asked for an independent review before authorizing the $60 billion plus cost he and Republicans in Congress favor. New questions were raised today about the U.S. military's commitment to rooting out prejudice, even deadly violence against gays and lesbians in the ranks. Correspondent Martin reports why.
It should have been a crowning moment for Major General Robert Clark, reviewing the troops one last time as he turned over command of Fort Campbell, Kentucky, and headed for a prestigious job in the Pentagon. Instead, there was this.
There is not, nor has there ever been, during my time here, a climate of homophobia on post.
Clark's change of command ceremony was overshadowed by last summer's brutal murder of Private Barry Winchell, a victim of an anti-gay climate. 30 members of Congress have written Defense Secretary Cohen charging that Clark is responsible for tolerating anti-gay harassment, a charge Clark forcefully denies.
I find it very disappointing that people who don't know me, people who have never set their eyes on me, can characterize my leadership.
But over the past year, 120 soldiers have been discharged from Fort Campbell for homosexuality, compared to only 6 the year before. One of those 120 told 60 Minutes that even after the murder, soldiers were chanting anti-gay slogans on their morning run.
It was pretty much, from what I can remember,
Faggot, faggot, down the street, shoot him, till he retreats.
Winchell's murderers have been tried and convicted, but Congressman Barney Frank says the harassment of gays won't stop until higher-ups are punished.
What happens is that abuses go forward, I think because there are people in the military who resent the policy, and they're never disciplined, they're never checked.
A still secret investigation by the Army's Inspector General cleared Clark of any negligence in Winchell's murder. Whether other officers who had more direct control over Winchell's unit will be punished remains to be seen. David Martin, CBS News, the Pentagon.
There is one prominent area of American life that nearly wholeheartedly embraces the gay lifestyle. That's the entertainment business, especially television. CBS's Sandra Hughes reports there are some who strongly believe the media have gone too far.
It was only 3 years ago that this admission, "I'm gay," on a network comedy series caused a huge ruckus. This year, an admission like this,
"If he knew I were gay,"
on the CBS reality show Survivor didn't stir the same criticism. NBC's Will and Grace is a hit show with 2 openly gay characters, honored this week by the Gay and Lesbian Alliance Against Defamation.
The entertainment media is here to entertain, but there's an ancillary function, and that's to enlighten.
But there are still vocal critics who think the media doesn't reflect mainstream America.
The media is very, very pro-homosexual. It says to a male or a female, hey, this is no big deal. Don't get upset. It desensitizes.
He's not alone. Southern Baptists boycotted Disney when they offered same-sex domestic partner benefits. And CBS News has learned that at the Southern Baptist Convention next week, leaders will call for some retaliation against the big 3 automakers for the same move yesterday. Reverend Sheldon insists this trend won't spread far.
The majority of the businesses in America are very small. They're very, very cost-conscious, not political correctness conscious.
A recent survey finds that only 19% of the nation's workforce are employed at large companies that offer same-sex benefits. In state and local governments, just 7% offer benefits.
Only about 1% of those employees wind up applying for same-sex benefits because experts say most gays are still in the closet at work.
Still, the cloak is lifting. The CIA offers a booklet for gay intelligence agents, and just this week hosted a gay pride rally for its homosexual employees. On TV this fall, even more gay characters than the 20 or so now. Whether or not they survive to the end is still up in the air. Sandra Hughes, CBS News, Los Angeles.
Next on CBS, the latest U.S. government investigation into the assassination of Dr. Martin Luther King. The results are in.
On next week's Evening News, they're the hungriest termites ever. Could your house be next? And the dangers of sleep deprivation. We'll show you who's at risk.
For 18 months, a Justice Department team led by one of the government's top civil rights prosecutors has been investigating old suspicions of some conspiracy behind the 1968 assassination of Dr. Martin Luther King, Jr. Tonight, the results are in, and CBS's Bob Orr has them.
32 years after Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was gunned down in Memphis, the U.S. Justice Department said today there is still no proof that anyone other than James Earl Ray was behind King's murder. In a 138-page report, government investigators concluded they'd found no reliable evidence that Dr. King was killed by conspirators. Ray, who died in prison 2 years ago, claimed he was merely the fall guy in a broader scheme. In a 1997 jailhouse meeting, King's son Dexter seemed to accept Ray's argument.
Did you kill my father?
No, I didn't, no.
Today, another of King's sons, Martin III, rejected the government's findings.
James Earl Ray was not the trigger man and, in fact, was an unknown patsy.
Ray was not alone in suggesting that a conspiracy was behind the murder of the civil rights leader. Lloyd Jowers, who owned a bar near the motel where King was shot, claimed he was part of a plot involving an alleged mafia figure, Memphis police, and a shadowy man known only as Raul. And a former FBI agent also claimed he found papers in Ray's car referring to a Raul. But the Justice Department has dismissed all of the conspiracy claims. 5 separate investigations now have reached the same conclusion. There was no plot to kill King. But even the government's latest report recognizes there will be lingering doubts. Questions and speculation, it says, may always surround the assassination. Bob Orr, CBS News, Washington.
The art of history and the history of art lost a unique painter today. Artist Jacob Lawrence died in Seattle. His paintings portrayed the experiences of African Americans, including an extraordinary 60-painting series called Migration, about the movement of black Americans to the North. Lawrence himself was born in New Jersey after his parents migrated north in search of a better life. Jacob Lawrence was 82. People living on the Greek island of Rhodes were startled today, and some were panicked by an offshore explosion powerful enough to break windows. Turns out the Turkish Navy was conducting war games in the Aegean Sea using a retired warship for target practice. 2 torpedoes hit the mark, but even with a huge hole in its side, the ship stayed afloat for hours. A shadowy Greek terror group has taken responsibility for yesterday's assassination of a British diplomat on the streets of Athens, calling it retaliation for last year's NATO bombing of Serbia. The Greek government has repeatedly made promises, so far unkept, to crack down on terrorism. And a dramatic and tragic incident on the Texas-Mexico border, illustrating the desperation of some who try to make the illegal crossing into the USA. These pictures were taken by a Mexican camera crew from the Mexican side of the Rio Grande as U.S. Border Patrol agents chased 3 illegals who had crossed back into the water. The river isn't wide, and some tried to help, but the current apparently was too strong, and 2 of the men drowned. On the CBS Weather Watch, despite recent rain and more in the forecast, the ultra drought in the Midwest, Southwest, and Southeast is getting worse. Governor Jeb Bush today asked federal officials to declare all of Florida an agricultural disaster area. Sharks known to frequent warm waters in the Gulf of Mexico during summer months are believed responsible for attacking 2 swimmers this morning in Gulf Shores, Alabama. 1 victim lost an arm. The police closed a 30-mile stretch of public beaches. Next here on CBS, Hollywood goes to war. Lots of heroic Americans, but the Brits say, hey, what about us? It's no secret Hollywood often changes the facts of a story to make it more interesting. But when a new popular film set during World War II landed in British theaters this week, it was hit with a barrage of outrage. CBS's Mark Phillips went on reconnaissance to find out why.
What's wrong with this picture? American World War II sailors attacking a Nazi submarine and even capturing the vital Enigma cipher machine that would enable the Allies to break the secret German codes.
I think we got the code wrong!
The Hollywood film, U-571, now playing in Britain, details this crucial turning point in the war, except for one thing.
Gentlemen, it's our turn.
In fact, it was someone else's turn. In fact, it was David Balme of the British Royal Navy, not the U.S. Navy, who captured the first Enigma machine. And he's got the U-boat captain's hat as a souvenir to prove it.
I kept my crew on deck because I thought if the boat was going to sink, there's no point in everybody being sunk.
Balme, now 79, was a 20-year-old sub-lieutenant aboard HMS Bulldog when it attacked and blew U-110 to the surface in 1941. Before the U.S. was even in the war. Balme, that's him in the back of the boat, boarded the sub despite fears it was rigged to self-destruct and discovered the invaluable Enigma.
I had to go up 3 vertical ladders and along a slippery deck with waves breaking over, so thank heavens it wasn't dropped overboard.
But Hollywood deemed that American heroism was more likely to attract American audiences. The heroic truth, the British say, has been torpedoed in the interest of profit. The rage has even surfaced in Parliament.
Is this an affront to the memories of the British sailors?
Madam Speaker, I agree entirely with what my honourable friend says.
There was even a motion deploring the movie.
If suddenly Iwo Jima was suddenly the British Royal Marines raising the flag after a fight with the Japanese, there would be an outcry.
Of course he means the famous U.S. Marine flag raising on Iwo Jima, but you get the point. And so does David Balme, who's not a bit bitter. The movie is dedicated to his real exploits, and he even visited the set.
I think it's a terrific film. One of a few films I stayed awake throughout.
Ironically, the controversy over a film about make-believe heroism has brought more attention to the real hero. And David Baum has his own memories and the last laugh.
Long time.
On assignment in Lymington, England, I'm Mark Phillips.
And that's part of our world tonight. Sunday morning, Bob Schieffer has Face the Nation. Now look at what's coming up Sunday evening on 60 Minutes and tomorrow night on a special 48 Hours.
A well-connected lawyer who had it all, but he couldn't get away with murder. Inside the investigation that brought a killer down. Saturday on 48 Hours.
Should an 11-year-old who shot and killed a man be tried as a juvenile or as an adult who could go to prison for life? 60 Minutes, Sunday.
Until 48 Hours tomorrow night, Saturday night at 8, 7 Central Time. Dan Rather reporting for the CBS Evening News. Good night.
For news 24 hours a day, CBS.com on the internet and on our interactive partner, America Online at keyword CBS News.
Great gift ideas for Father's Day on the Saturday Early Show. Experience CBS News.